I'm muted, but there's, okay?
Yep, I'm gonna turn this one
Uh,
on. Unmute.
So Karen, yours is the long
That's
shot.
me, yes,
Okay.
I'm the main.
We don't really need,
Alright, so people are gonna have
There's
to mute.
feedback with that, Jim. That's better.
Who's O22?
That's not better. It's Jim's laptop.
so everybody here is muted, right?
Yeah, but that person right there needs to be
Here, right
muted.
now, there, I just muted our room, so nobody can hear you right now.
But this person needs to be muted and that person.
It's not the problem, it's this.
Who's talking?
So we're about to begin. My name is,
Jim, they can't hear you. If I put this on, we get a whole bunch of feedback.
I'm going to ask them to mute.
But it's your laptop that's doing it.
I'm muted.
Do you have it on your phone?
Yeah, if you have it on your phone and your laptop, that's gonna cause feedback. So you're gonna have to do one or the other.
Okay, hold on. Better?
Better.
Yeah, okay.
Now I think you could ask if they're working.
Okay.
I think if I can.
Super. Are we good? All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Cavanaugh, Douglas County Commissioner, Chair of the Douglas County Board's Health and Human Services Committee. We are here for a public hearing on update of the response to the COVID-19 Renters Assistance resolution that was passed by the County Board on Tuesday. We're also going to hear some program updates from our General Assistance Department. We are interested in public feedback on the Renters Assistance Initiative and then any other initiatives. We're going to try to do this in an hour. And so if you could keep your remarks to a minute or two, that would be productive. I am just going to do a brief update on where we are now. The county received $166 million in CARES funding from the federal government almost 3 months ago now. We are in the process of distributing that in the community, and we've had a couple of approvals. Most recently on our board meeting on Tuesday, we approved, I think it was $13 million to the health department. We approved another $10 million or so to public properties to upgrade some of our needs in the Douglas County Health Center for our long-term residents and at the Douglas County Correction Center. And we approved, I think, $250,000 for the treasurer to upgrade some of their communications capacity and other needed items. We will be doing that on an ongoing basis for the administration of Douglas County. Out of our $166 million, we'll also be entertaining proposals from the cities in Douglas County, the city of Omaha, the city of Ralston, city of Valley, Bennington, Waterloo. We are hopeful that we will have some cooperation from the state of Nebraska, which received $1.2 billion. And so if you add our $166 million to the $1.2 billion, you come up with $1.366 billion. Douglas County represents 28.4% of the population of Nebraska. $166 million does not represent 28.4% of $1.3 billion. So we're going to be pushing to get our fair share. Currently, if we are restricted to $166 million, that's $220 million short of a 28.4% share of the overall state of Nebraska portion. Today is real simple. There's $10 million that was approved by the county board on Tuesday for rent assistance, and that's good. Now the regulations of how we do that administratively is the challenge that's before us, so that we can get this money to people in need as soon as possible. I'm anxious to get this out there so that people can start paying their rent in July, but they've also had arrearages because of the COVID shutdown going back to March, April, May, and June. And so we'll deal with that going forward. But today is a discussion of how do we make this happen? How do we take this 10 million out of the 166 million that we already have and get it to meet people's rent needs as soon as possible. We've had great participation from our General Assistance Department, which currently does administer a modest rent assistance program, which could serve as some type of a base for going forward. We've also had robust input from community members, and I see a number of you on this call, and we hope to hear from you as well about how maybe we could do a public-private partnership to speed up the delivery of this much-needed assistance to people in need. And so I think to start things off, we might start with our administrative people. I wanted to introduce my colleagues on the board, Claire Duda, and we have, I think, maybe other commissioners who will join us in the course of this. A lot of people are coming on because of social distancing on our Zoom capacity, and so you may see them as well. And once we get through with the Douglas County folks' presentation, I'll try to get this as quickly as possible, we'll kind of open it up to discussions of people in the community. So if you want to be heard, maybe just raise your hand on
Or
Zoom.
they can indicate in chat.
Yeah, and we'll try to recognize you in order. You'll see that on chat. I wanted to begin kind of, we'll start with the global view of where we are on the CARES funding in Douglas County. And we can either start with Patrick Bloomingdale or our finance director, Joe Lorenz, to give us kind of that overview.
Okay, so when you say overview, in general, do you want to talk about the overview of the procedures for rental assistance, or, I mean, because we have 1 hour, I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about
No, I think
CARES Act
the
in general.
rental assistance is the focus. Let's go right to
Okay.
it.
All right, Joe, why don't you go ahead and talk about, we've had some conversations with our consultant, Deloitte, about the complexities of providing the rental assistance and to comply with the federal guidelines we have to comply with. So Joe's going to talk about what those issues are.
Yeah, since this was approved at Tuesday's county board meeting, we've had some discussions with our consultant Deloitte on this, and we actually have a big Zoom call scheduled for this afternoon as we put together a internal county project team to kind of design this process. And a couple points come out, though, is under the CARES Act, they've issued the money, and rental assistance definitely applies, but after the initial money was awarded, they came out with further compliance guidelines, and this money now under the CARES Act is subject to uniform guidance, and which entails certain procedures that have to be followed in order for these funds to be dispersed in a compliant manner. So we're working with Deloitte, and like I said, we put the project team together to put a federally compliant set of processes to execute this program. And the plan of the county is to essentially subcontract or have sub-grantees awarded within the community who will really administer the rental assistance program. And we're putting together a application form that these potential community groups can apply for to come back in, and that's going to have certain information. It won't be that tedious, but it will involve them giving us certain information so that we could really take a look and judge that they are able administratively to institute this program and meet the federal compliance regulations. So what we're going to do this afternoon is start to work on that compliance application that will go out to these communities. I would say that there is a very strong chance and preference that the community groups that we will work with will have prior experience administering federally funded programs, just because they kind of know the ropes and what all is entailed in being able to administer and disperse money that comes from the federal government. So we're going to do that, and so the goal is really in the next week or so is to define and post the application process. Some of that involves parameters of what will be involved and who would qualify for the rental assistance, and in that respect we have quite a few, at least close to 10 different rental assistance programs in place now across the country, where we're kind of going to review those and go with a best practices approach to do that program, so that they really will go out and meet the people that we want to meet their needs for. And then, so we'll go out and we'll have this application process. The applicants will have a few days to prepare it, which shouldn't be that or take that long. It'll be a fairly simple application. Then that will come back to the county for review, and that after our review of the project team, we'll make our recommendations to the commissioners, and then the commissioners will decide which local organizations to work with and how much money to allocate to them, and then we can make those awards and get the process going so that people can begin to receive the rent assistance.
And just to add to that, you know, there's other elements that go into this. For example, we need to determine how much, not only how much money, you know, each nonprofit or organization will get, but when they disperse those funds, will it be $960 a month? Will it be for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? So all of that's going to go into it. So the hope is we can provide what the process is going to be to present as early as next Tuesday, because we don't have a meeting the following week, to present what not for necessarily for action, but just to tell, okay, county board, this is the process in play. This is a federally compliant process that we're going to engage in. Unless the county board has any serious questions or concerns, we intend to move forward with this to expedite the process.
That's great. I don't know if any of my colleagues have any questions at this point. The regulatory apparatus has to be in place before we can distribute money, so as soon as we can have that done and before the board, the better. It sounds like the administration is moving on that, and that's a good thing. Joe, could you mask up? This is a Health and Human Service Committee meeting. The idea is to get assistance to people as soon as possible, and as you hear, probably the most effective and quickest way to do that is to partner with some of our community groups. We also, as I indicated, have capacity in the county that currently administers a rent assistance program, and that's done through our general assistance department. And we have the director of the general assistance department here, Melissa Suick. I just asked for you to quickly give us an overview of what general assistance is doing with renter's assistance.
As we stated in the last committee meeting, we are...
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty
Might
hearing
need to
you.
speak up, Melissa.
As we stated in the last committee meeting, we are doing everything we can to keep our current clients on our program and trying to reach everybody that would be eligible for our program based on income and resources. Our program is very specific to who they serve. Our program is a payer of last resort. Therefore, if somebody's getting assistance from another state or federally funded program, if they're getting money from the federal government, such as Social Security, if they have income and resources that exceed our requirements, then they would not be eligible for general assistance. Right now, I have a snapshot, an updated snapshot from January 2020 to May 2020 of what our numbers look like. Overall, our cases have increased, and I'll share this with everybody, have increased 18% since January.
Thank you.
Our overall numbers as far as our new clientele that are coming in through the doors, those have decreased compared to our January snapshot. I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that we are doing everything that we can to keep people on the program, so we don't have many people that are coming through kind of the revolving door of general assistance. So as you can see, our total intake in CC cases, which is our continuous caseload, for May 2020 was 612 people, which was an overall increase of 18%. Our overall clients that are on the continuous case, again, those are clients that have been ongoing assistance, has increased 33%. We've talked about it in the Board of Trustees meeting that our client-patient data, there's a snapshot of that has decreased just because we are limiting the flow going into the health center. Everybody that needs to be seen is still being seen, but we're doing as much as we can via telehealth. We're extending prescription refills, so they don't have to come in every month for those. And again, for general assistance, we're doing that as well, where people don't have to come in every 6 months and reapply, just trying to limit the traffic that's coming into the building. And we're also approving 2 months of benefits at a time, again, to limit the traffic coming in. And then I also have a updated expense/budget history. I provided that last committee meeting. This is current as of July 15th. And it just shows, it's not all of our line items, but it's our kind of our bigger line items that affect the client assistance. And it has what our actual budget, what we've spent, what we budgeted, how much is obligated, and then the remaining balance. Those numbers will slightly increase, but that's kind of where we're standing for the fiscal year 1920. Having about 88% of our budget spent.
Thank you. Melissa, currently under our renter's assistance, which I understand is limited to $600 a month, and there are additional needs-based tests that limit it further, how many people are on that program today?
As of May, we have 612 people that were on our program, either pending or approved general assistance.
Okay.
And the $600 is the max benefit. It's the max benefit. So we pay rent basically based on where they're living and then any income and resources that they may have.
Right. And year over year, how does that figure match with a year ago, May?
We have, well, a year ago, May, I don't have that exact figure, but just from January 2020, we're up 18%. I know we are up from last May overall as well.
Okay. And these documents that you provided for us will be posted and publicly available. But to help people on this, the rent assistance portion of the documents, is that on the second page under rent?
It's on this is a 5-year snapshot, so our current 1920 fiscal year is up at the top of the first page, and the line item rent is on there.
Okay.
We have about
You're talking the colored one or the black?
No, the black and white one,
Okay.
where it's the budget snapshot.
So the annual budget
Was 1.5 what we budgeted, and we spent just over $1 million of that, so we have about 69% of that obligated.
right. So of the $5.1 million annual budget, $1 million of that is currently budgeted for renter's assistance. $1.5 million. $1 million of that has been spent, or 69%. A balance remains of $458,154.
Yes.
Okay. How many people at General Assistance work on our renter's assistance program?
We have a staff of 32 people, and we have 8 case managers that are doing applications directly related to our general assistance, rental assistance, medical program.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know if there's anyone else from the county that would like to speak to this. If not, I was going to throw it open to the folks who have joined us. I think we've had some initial conversations with some of the people that I see on the screen who are in the community, either advocating for us to get this rolled out as soon as possible, or are in the not-for-profit community who are engaged in renter's assistance now. I'm not singling anybody out or playing favorites here, but I've had a conversation, and he's appeared before the board, with Randy McCoy, who is the executive director of the Metro Area Continuum of Care for the Homeless. Randy, I see you there today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're interested, of course, in expediting this, and with help from our private not-for-profit community that's engaged in this, I think that can be done. I'd be happy to hear any ideas that you might have on implementing this in kind of support to, I believe you spoke to us Tuesday about a program that you currently administer for renters assistance in the community.
Yes, sir, that's correct. At the end of March, Matt's launched a project, we refer to it as housing problem solving. And since then, I've been distributing funds to households who are behind on rent or maybe come behind on rent. To date, we have served almost 700 households. We have dispersed about $700,000 in assistance. Now, our catchment covers more than just Douglas County. We also serve Sarpy County in Nebraska and Potawatomi County. And so a portion of those funds go to those other two counties. But just Douglas County, it's probably somewhere around $550,000 so far, probably about 550 to 600 households served. Across the board, though, about 82% of the households that are coming in have been impacted by COVID, whether it's a job loss or an illness or some other event that has caused a reduction in income and is directly related to why they are behind on rent. We don't do this alone. We work with a number of partner agencies and nonprofits across all three counties. Currently, we have 15 agencies that we work with. And we distribute the funds to them. They go through our application process, approve households, and issue payments directly to the landlords, not to the individual members of the household themselves. I think that kind of framework could be used to distribute a portion or a good portion of these funds, potentially in combination with general assistance, if that was the thought process. I think kind of the regulatory things that you were talking about in the very beginning, who qualifies, how much they can qualify for, and how long, are definitely things to work out, but I don't see those as insurmountable barriers. What I would encourage in thinking about creating those guidelines there are several other pots of funds available. What I mean is the City of Omaha has community development block grants and emergency solutions grants funds that are available. The Department of Health and Human Services through the state is also allocating emergency solutions grant funds, and DPD would allocate community development block grant funds to the county level, but I think it would probably be outside of the City of Omaha jurisdiction, so kind of that western piece of the county. And I know DHHS is getting ready to review their allocation request for proposals. But as much as possible, make sure that we are tailoring these funds to either serve individuals who can't be served by other pots of money, or to create additional backstops for households who may need more assistance than some of those other funds could provide. Just as an example, ESG will allow us to serve households up to 50% of area median income, but will not do mortgage assistance. Community Development Block Grant will allow us to go up to 80% of area median income and will allow mortgage assistance. So there may be a need to provide assistance for people between 80 and 100% of area median income. There may be a need for additional mortgage assistance, or there may be a need for longer-term assistance programs. So maybe 3, 4, 5 months, depending on how long it takes someone to get back to work, get back to being square again, kind of where they were prior to whatever guidance is adopted would be, I think, encouraged in setting those parameters. I think general assistance, if they have the capacity to do it, would be fantastic. If it is a joint, county-private partnership with nonprofits, I think that is quite feasible. And I think once we kind of hammer out those parameters and get the guidance in place of who qualifies and how we do it, we can start moving funds fairly quickly. The other thing that concerns me a little bit about CARES Act funds through Treasury and not some of these other pots of money that I've discussed is the limitation on the applicable period of use. And so everything that we have seen so far, and if the lawyer or someone else has other information, that would be fantastic. But everything that we have seen indicates that December 31st at the latest, or we have also heard December 15th is when funds need to be expended by. And so if that is accurate, and that is going to be kind of the drop dead date to expend CARES Act specific funds, I think it is also a consideration of how do we expend those funds first, potentially, and not cross up with any other guidance that's been issued for other pots of funds, and how do we get as much of that out the door within that time frame as possible.
That's great, and thanks, Randy. Those are some excellent points. I think that we'd be very interested in the criteria that you have used with some success so far on your program serving, sounds like about 550, 600 Douglas County residents, which is our focus. And then these income guidelines, you raise good points. We're in a crisis here, and so the normal limitations that, say, general assistance would have don't really apply. I mean, unemployment has become so vast that people who would not meet general assistance guidelines are now in need of renter's assistance. And so, we would be interested in what guidelines you have employed, perhaps as kind of instructive, along with the ones that have been mentioned from the 10 or so counties around the country. We're not reinventing the wheel here. People are already doing this. We've heard from other counties that have been doing this for months now. So what we're trying to do is jumpstart and catch up, because frankly, Douglas County is behind the ball on getting renter's assistance to people. So anything that you can do to help expedite this is really appreciated. You did mention one thing, and I wonder if you participate in this, mortgage assistance as well. Is that something that your program deals with?
Yes, Commissioner, it is. We have a mortgage. So the initial program we launched was 100% funded through private philanthropy. We have taken a very broad and kind of expansive view of being able to qualify people for the assistance with as little documentation barriers, things like that, as possible, just to ensure that people were able to stay housed. Mortgage assistance is one of those things that we have done. Again, we issue payments directly to the mortgage holder. We go through the normal vetting process and things like that, but we have issued those mortgage assistance payments. I could not, and I apologize, tell you with any accuracy the amount of money or the number, but I can say that in the last 3 weeks, particularly, we have seen a fairly significant uptick in the number of people coming forward who need assistance. We've also seen the amount of that assistance per request increase rather significantly. So in the earlier days of April, first half of May, I would say, it has been usually like 1 month of mortgage assistance or rent assistance, and now what we're seeing is people coming in with 2 or 3 months. Whether that is directly related to the eviction court opening back up and those cases being able to move forward is potentially the reason, or maybe people thought they would just figure it out, that things would open back up and they would get back on their feet again quicker, and so they thought they could catch up. So we are seeing the number increase and the amount increase. We are also working with Family Housing Advisory Center services, specifically around the mortgage piece, because sometimes if you are 2 or 3 months behind on your mortgage, there may be some technical pieces around that, especially if they're talking about foreclosure or some other action
And you raise another point relative to the courts have now reopened for purposes of evictions. Those cases are going to be coming through, and we want to, try to get in front of that so that people who are COVID impacted on their ability to pay rents, mortgages, whatever, are not facing evictions when we're sitting on a big pot of money that could help them out. So we'll probably want to follow up with you, and I'm sure there are people in the legal community and the judiciary who have, expert knowledge on this and how we can get in front of that, which is, I believe the courts have now just recently reopened for eviction hearings. Are you aware of the actual timeline on that?
Yes, Commissioner, I believe, and I could be off a date or two, but my belief is that the hearings for post-moratorium cases began on the 22nd. We have been working with Legal Aid Nebraska on this to an extent, and we are going to start a pilot program with Legal Aid Nebraska with part of the city's community development block grant dollars to work specifically in eviction court to be able to provide assistance or counsel or guidance for individuals or households who are coming to eviction court, but try to tie them back to assistance funds whenever possible. And so if we can kind of short circuit those evictions early on by paying rent and getting it taken care of, that is kind of our goal. But also to provide them with representation and just the knowledge that they would need. That project probably won't start until mid-July, maybe 1st of August. But we are working with them right now on how we can begin to contact people or more affirmatively reach out to people who are up for eviction, and can we take care of that before they end up having to go to court.
Yeah, if I just add something really quick. So while we're getting the public input, which I think is very important and good, I just want to clarify that we will not be working when we put together the requirements, the application, to make it a compliant program. We will not be getting input from Match or any other organization in doing that, because they are going to potentially be applying for those funds, submitting an application. It would be inappropriate to have any organization who may be applying for the funds participate in putting that together. So I just want to clarify
And that's
that.
the purpose of public hearings. We want to have this in front of the public in this forum, and the regulations will rightfully be made by the appropriate people here, and it's just getting the important input of the people who are actually delivering assistance, and we want to get in that activity as soon as possible. So thank you, Mr. McCoy. We look forward to continued discussions and hopefully some early action to get Douglas County and the Renters Assistance COVID-19 impacted population as soon as possible. Thanks. Is there any last words that you would like?
No, Commissioner. I just the county commission as a whole. I mean, a $10 million allocation for rental assistance is amazing. I mean, I thought going in that $1 million was substantial and a huge amount of good, but $10 million is fantastic. And you guys have all been very forward-thinking and responsive in this.
Thanks very much. I see, is David Corbin got his hand up there? Mr. Corbin?
I just turned my screen on. I don't have my hand up, but I don't know if this is the appropriate time to talk about utilities assistance as well.
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you all for supporting rental assistance. I'm representing the Missouri Valley Group Sierra Club today. I've sent letters to all the commissioners, and on that list was rental assistance, but also utility assistance. And we're in a unique situation here that we have public power, and so a lot of those details that were talked about earlier in rental assistance probably will be easier because we have elected boards who handle that money. They know how many people are impacted and are at risk later on. I know they've given them a grace period but later on would be at risk of having their utilities turned off, both with OPPD and MUD. So I've written my commissioner, Mark Kraft, and I've written my MUD commissioner, who is Tanya Cook, and with the hopes that because they have the data, they have the infrastructure, they know who is in need, that this would also be included in the CARES Act funds. I know, as mentioned earlier, there are other counties that are already doing similar things. We're even better off in that we have public power, and so it is, I don't think you have to work through, even though it's public power, their assistance, they've worked with United Way and Catholic Charities and so on to help those people who are having a hard time paying their bills. But this would make it easier so that people would have one place to contact and say, they know what the needs are. And so I'm hoping that can be something that be part of the CARES Act. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up on that. I've been contacted by members of both the OPPD board and the MUD board about their interest in assisting us in utilities assistance, and I think that's an appropriate initiative going forward. A step at a time. We'll try to get renters assistance up and out as soon as possible, but then the utilities assistance hopefully will follow shortly thereafter. I think they are going to provide us shortly with numbers of the ratepayer base in Douglas County that are in arrears, particularly since March 15th, 2020, when the COVID shutdown began. Our General Assistance Department, in addition to its Renters Assistance Program, has a Clients Utilities Program, and maybe just briefly give us an overview of that.
Yes, part of our rental assistance is paying client utilities, and typically our clientele are renting an apartment that has utilities included. So our utility expenses are quite minimal compared to everything else in our budget. We had budgeted $90,000 for the year, and we spent just over $56,000 of that, leaving us at spending 63% of that. Again, majority of our clients do have rent included or utilities included in their rent.
And, in the administration of that program, does the utility assistance go to the renter or to the utility?
All of our payments go directly to either the landlord or the utility company.
All right. I see a whole screen full of people. If anyone else would like to speak, now would be the time. We're trying to bring this in an hour. We've got, I think, about 19 minutes left. So I don't know how they raise their hand so that we can see.
They can unmute and speak, or they can.
If you want to speak, you can unmute at this time. You don't have to, but we're throwing the floor open to public input. This is a public hearing, so if you want to, I see Michael's iPad. You're recognized. Michael.
Hello, this is Michael O'Hara of 6010 South 146th Street, complying with your open meetings law requirement. I'd like to follow on David Corbin's comment and note that OPPD and MUD are multi-county jurisdictions. OPPD serves Carter Lake, Iowa, so they'll be applying in Iowa as well as Nebraska. And while most of the OPPD customers are in Douglas County, many are in other counties in Nebraska, and they'll be applying to Governor Ricketts for money. I really like the comment that we would be modifying upward the standard. The General Assistance Program should be an emergency response program, whereas this is a specific emergency response, and therefore we ought to be addressing the needs of those that are all through the economic spectrum, not just those that are temporarily at need. I'm pleased to see the county has allocated this much money, and they will need to be attentive to OPPD and MUD's needs as well, because if the county does not use this money for that purpose, then electric rates, water rates, and gas rates are gonna have to go up. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that that's a good point relative to the specificity of this emergency, so that the criteria for people receiving CARES, renter's assistance, utilities assistance, and we'll probably be talking about food and healthcare assistance before it's over, is different because the population is different than the general assistance, general emergency, which is much more geared towards people in very, very modest means and very, very immediate needs. And so the pandemic has had the effect of putting a large portion of our society in economic peril. And this is way, way beyond the population that general assistance normally serves, and that's one of the reasons that we're engaging in conversations with others with capacity in the community. This is a pandemic. It's everywhere. And so the unemployment figures that you see spiking into the tens of thousands are way, way bigger than what general assistance is designed to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And you can see that in the numbers that they have provided here relative to the folks that they serve. They're in the hundreds, and we're talking about the tens of thousands. So thanks for that. It gives us an idea of the scale of the task before us and what we have to do. Anyone else? We're coming up on the hour, and I don't want to run over, but is there anyone else?
Commissioner Kavanaugh, this is Erin Feinsteiner. I direct community outreach and advocacy at Together Omaha. I just first off want to thank the county board for allocating $10 million to rental assistance. We've been saying for several months, and I know Randy can attest to this as well, that a crisis is coming and we need to be prepared. So this is going to go a long way in helping us do that. I just want to echo a few things that Randy rightly pointed out as you're putting together applications and requirements and qualifications for this rental assistance. First and foremost, if you get the money to us, to organizations, we are well versed in distributing rental assistance and doing it quickly. We have an entire team, for instance, at Together that just fields calls and helps people get money as quickly as possible so they can remain in their housing and not become homeless and further strain our already strained system. And I also just want to point out, and I've said this before in the Health and Human Services Committee, we're going to be dealing with an entirely new group of people who perhaps have never touched the service system before. So we need to be as flexible and as broad in our eligibility requirements for this money. As Randy pointed out, we have several other pots of money that deal with our more vulnerable neighbors, and we need that 80 to 100% AMI for people to stay in their housing lest they drop into those income strata that we already serve. Just as an example, I'm looking at the data from just the calls that we receive at Together for our crisis engagement front door program. And what we're seeing is we're getting more and more calls and we're writing bigger and bigger checks to help keep people in their homes. And that means two things. We're dealing with people who have higher incomes who are struggling. And the more calls we receive as the months go on, we're seeing that more and more people, as Randy said, are realizing that they can't catch up, are realizing that they need help. And in the past couple months, we have also seen a huge influx in need for our other services, for instance, the food pantry. And what that tells us is that more and more people are going to need our help with rental assistance or with mortgage assistance on the back end because, as they say, rent eats first. So that's going to be the first bill they try to pay, and as they get more and more strained in their other parts of their life, they're going to end up coming to us. So if we can spend that $10 million for sure, the community can, and I know that you can't come to us for those eligibility requirements, as was pointed out earlier, but we are working in the community. We've been doing this for decades, and we stand ready and willing to help and help anybody who needs us. So thank you again for the $10 million, and I and hope we can all work together.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Feichinger. I have a document that I think you presented to us on May 19th that outlines some of what you said, and on the back is a list of allied organizations. Just for the record, because this is a public meeting, I should have asked Mr. McCoy for this. You give us your name, your address, and the group you're representing again, real quick.
Sure, Erin Feichinger, 812 South 24th Street, and I represent Together Omaha.
Thank you. One of the points that you raised in the hearing on May 19th was that 49% of the roughly 70,000 renters in our community are considered rent burdened. And I imagine that what we're talking about here are people that, you know, were rent burdened maybe before COVID and now have been doubly burdened by losing their employment. We have heard from, I believe it was OTOC at our Tuesday hearing this week when we considered the $10 million resolution, that there might be need for tens of millions in rent assistance. Do you have any statistical data that would give us some idea of the scope there in terms of either numbers of renters or needed resources?
Yeah, I can follow up with you as well afterwards, and you can distribute that information to whoever needs it. We don't have a really good metric for determining how much money we're going to need, but we're going to need more than 10 million. And we are asking from other sources as well. We're expecting, and we would hope that all the other government bodies that are receiving money and are in charge of distributing it would be allocating a substantial portion to rental assistance. But I mean, I think OTOC's number is correct, and I think we're going to need even more as this crisis, it's kind of a slow crisis and will continue to build as we move further into the year. So I'm happy to follow up with you and see if we can get a better number.
That'd be great. Thanks. I'd appreciate any information you could pass along would be appreciated. Thank you. We've got a few more minutes. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard? Ben Salazar, I see you there, and I apologize. I got your message late, Ben, and I wasn't able to return it, but would you like to speak? Ben Salazar? You're mute, Ben. Sorry. No?
It's on his end.
I don't know. We're having a technical difficulty, Ben, but if you can get unmuted, we'd like to hear from you.
Ben, you could also type any comments in chat.
There you go.
Well, this is Gloria Osterberry from Omaha Together One Community, and we too appreciate deeply the measures taken this week by the commissioners to put $10 million out there for agencies to use as soon as possible to help prevent evictions. We're very interested in the eligibility guidelines and would like to suggest that there should be some account given to loss of income on the basis of loss of child care or dependent care. Our children, elders, and others who are in need of daycare may not be able to be provided in the usual way, and if that requires a wage earner staying home to give that care, that ought to be a consideration. So thank you for taking my opinion on that. That is the OTOC opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Osterberry. That is a good consideration. We have dealt with that in Douglas County among our own 2,000 plus employees impacted by this, particularly those frontline healthcare workers who have had difficulty even finding healthcare because of their occupation, and people are concerned about people working in assisted living and coming into their daycare situation. So that's a great consideration. I'm sure, like these other matters, counties around the country who have got this up and running have addressed that, and will definitely look to that going forward, but thanks for the suggestion. And thanks for OTOC's support on this initiative. We look forward to you providing us additional information when we come to the utilities, food, and healthcare portions of our assistance. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I hope we can
Jim needs
step
a
up.
comment there
Thank you.
from
Okay.
Ben Salazar
Now,
on the right up there.
I'm sorry, oh, I see. Okay, we have a text from Ben Salazar. Good morning. I joined late. I can try and catch up through you later, Jim. My concern is regarding status of undocumented families. I am currently working with leading Link to assist families without regards to status. I think that's an important point, Ben. We're both South Omaha guys, and we're very familiar with our immigrant community and proud of them. We're both part of that. I don't know that we want to make it a citizenship requirement to qualify. I think residents of Douglas County is as much of a qualification as we should require of people. Nobody should have to show their papers beyond the fact that they are a resident of Douglas County to participate in this. I don't know that there's a requirement in the CARES Act, but we will certainly look to make this as widely applicable, certainly to our immigrant community, who are probably disproportionately renters. So thanks for bringing that up. That's a good point. All right, we're reaching the hour. Is there anyone else? We really appreciate all of the interest and support that we received community-wide. I think, as we've mentioned in the front end, working together, we can definitely make this way better. And having this opportunity to take some of our $166 million and actually put it towards people, individuals in our community who are struggling as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic is job one. We have a working group in the county, as Mr. Bloomingdale has indicated, that will be promulgating some regulations to bring before the board in public meetings. And I think I should have mentioned at the beginning that we have a copy of the Public Meetings Act posted here on the wall. That's a requirement of our public meetings statute, and we comply with that. We're interested in making this as a public discussion as possible. This is public money, and so people in the public should have an opportunity to participate in how we use it. We have a collection of people.
Just Ben Salazar added, he's asked if there's a nonprofit from Latino community getting a share of the funds.
Okay.
We don't know yet because we're in the process of preparing the application, going through the process, working with our consultant to put together an application that can be, that nonprofits or groups can apply for the funds. So that is in the process. We're working on that now.
Okay. We have some folks from the public here, and yes, if you'd like to identify yourself for the record.
Will Simmons, Vice President, our Omaha, 2464 Harney Street. I had just a quick follow-up on the organizations you're working with. Have we been accounting for the geographic areas that those organizations serve based off of who they already serve, and trying to account to make sure we have an even spread?
So we will, yeah, absolutely. So what's going to happen is when we put together the application process and the requirements, and as Joe said, one of the things that's very important to us is that whoever gets these funds, we want nonprofits or whoever, we want to make sure that they have experience working with federal funds because it's very complex in complying with those. So then let's say we get the applications in, and then let's say we get 10, 15 groups. Well, look, when we vet those applications, we want to make sure that we have groups that cover the entire county. So we might have a group that covers only South Omaha, but then there's a group over here that covers another geographic area. So we want to cover the entire county.
Okay.
So you couldn't see him on camera, but that was Patrick Bloomingdale from our office, just kind of outlining. Is that?
Yeah, and then I had another kind of follow-up.
Go ahead.
My understanding of this is that it'll essentially function as a direct subsidy to landlords. And so my concern is that I think the date we're given is that the funds can't be distributed any later than December 17th or 27th, something like that. So my concern would be that once that runs out, that landlords might just, pursue an eviction immediately after that. So they might just, keep someone in that they would rather evict, but they're just going to hold on to get money from the county and then kick them out. So would it be within compliance, to anyone's knowledge, to include a stipulation for landlords, have a 1 month, non-eviction agreement, or 1 or 2 months, to ensure, that's not happening, that people have time to get back on their feet and, to work something out, especially for the lower income individuals.
That's a great point. I mean,
So we'll talk to Deloitte about that, Joe, will, because we want to see what other counties are doing. Yeah, I mean, if there's something like that, obviously we want to make sure people don't just get kicked out right away. So that's something we'll have to look at.
and, part of this is we're at the beginning. We're trying to get it rolled out there. And you're talking, kind of the other end, but it's good to have that foresight in mind looking forward. And as Mr. Bluebedale indicated, we'll definitely bring that up in these discussions for promulgating regulations. But thanks for that perspective. Is there anything else?
All good.
Okay. Joe Lorenz, you said you wanted to...
Yeah, I just want, as we're finishing up, to remind everybody again, just one point regarding compliance. This is CARES Act money, and the CARES Act money is very specific that anybody who qualifies for the use of CARES Act money for any of these different causes, there has to be a nexus that the need is driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. And for anyone who applies for rent assistance, that will be something that they are going to have to document and prove to us that the need for rent assistance is driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is just how the CARES Act is written. So I just wanted to reiterate that point again.
And thanks for that, Joe. I mean, again, we're not reinventing the wheel here. This bridge has been crossed by numerous counties around the country who have considered and dealt with this, and we're looking at those models to give us a way forward. So if there's nothing else from anyone in the public, nothing else from anyone here, we are coming up on the hour, and I promised that we would do this in an hour, so we will adjourn for now, but stay tuned. You're going to see some more on the promulgation of these regulations and the implementation of this program real soon at the Douglas County Board meeting. And so thanks everybody for participating, working together. We are going to make this better. We are going to get this assistance to the people who need it as soon as possible. Thanks a lot. Stay well. We done?